Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. All right, happy Singles Pride Day. Tomorrow is Evelina Falenta's birthday. I celebrate it as a Singles Pride Day. Evelina Falenta more or less has a happy marriage with herself. It sounds like it. She even thought about having a ceremony at some point. But to give you an idea of how much of a divide there is in our society, sometimes even just the disadvantages of being single can drive me to think about marrying somebody. And one of these days, I might even pull the trigger because of one of these divides. I want to bring up 3 times where I felt disadvantaged for being single and when I almost thought about marrying somebody just for various benefits. I was working on my PhD. I had just moved out of my family's home. I was working on a field called computational social choice theory. We've got various agents who need to make a decision. How do we combine them in some meaningful way, and some pros and cons of different ways, and computability of such, right? And the integrity of the calculation, just like our election systems right now. But my real passion was in another math problem called Ramsey theory. This involves graphs and how you can come up with graphs with various properties, and what are some properties that are forced in graphs, right, that are big enough, right? So for example, if you start randomly putting trillions and trillions of Legos together in bizarre way randomly, eventually you'll probably be able to find all sorts of stuff in the build, right? You could probably find an Empire State Building just by chance, right? Because there's so many, maybe not a trillion, maybe more like a Google Legos altogether, right? If you took all of the atoms of the universe, turned them into Legos, and randomly put them, you could probably find everything in there, right? Just like if you went far enough in the universe, you could probably find all sorts of stuff. You could probably find elements of 119 somewhere in the universe, right? There's probably quite a big chunk of it, right? You could probably find the best person in the world to marry if you went far enough in the universe, just by randomness, right, of the universe, right? So my real passion was in Ramsey theory, but there was no funding in Ramsey theory, and I came up with an idea. I was going to save as much money as I could from my stipend, and so after I graduate, I was going to marry somebody from a cheaper country and move back home with her to retire to work on Ramsey theory. That was my plan at the time. And then I started dating a distant cousin of Mary Curry. My mom was so upset at that, both at the concept and at the fact that I was dating somebody who wasn't Asian. My mom was very racist about that until very recently. And we broke up anyway, in large part because she wanted children. I didn't quite have enough to retire and raise children. I could probably retire, but not retire poorly, that is. And spend the last of my days on Ramsey theory and not live very long, but that's okay. At least I get to do what I love to do, right? But I couldn't raise children on that, so that didn't work. I got into an accident not long after my breakup with the distant cousin of Mary Curry, and my car insurance rates went way up well, not way up, but I wasn't able to get car insurance with Geico anymore. And when I quoted with this other insurance company, I was sitting across the table from the agent, and she showed me, she's Asian, Filipino, I think. And sometimes Asians talk very loosely with each other. This would probably not be very professional in an American setting. But she was like, Andrew, look at this. I was like, what happened? And she was typing away on her computer. She said, look what happens if you get married and you want to insure 2 cars. And so I was really upset. You got to understand, I just broken up. And it's not like I don't want to meet the right person. And I don't need to be reminded that I'm also being disadvantaged financially, right? It was just very upsetting. I was so upset that when I got home, I went on to, I can't remember which dating app I was using, but I started writing about the insurance experience. I was like, can you believe it? I pay this much for car insurance, and if I got married, it would be this much. Is anybody else in the same boat? Why don't we just get married on paper? We could save on car insurance. That way we could put our money aside to actually date the people we want to date. Something to that effect. I can't remember the exact words that I used. Something to that effect. Next thing I know, well, I got a lot of spam, obviously. Got to understand, all sorts of people use dating apps. So I got other insurance agents who told me they could quote me better and stuff like that. And eventually I got one girl who just said, I'm interested. I thought she actually was driving and paying too much for car insurance. And I asked her, what kind of car do you drive? What kind of insurance do you have? Turns out she doesn't even drive. And we went to a restaurant in downtown Seattle. And I was in such a rush to go see her after work one day that I really didn't secure my car very well. As we were eating, somebody broke into my car and stole my laptop. And both of us thought it was really ironic that we had been talking about car insurance. And that's what happened next. Now, I'm just about to get ready for a winter vacation of some sort. And I remembered last time what happened when I took a road trip. You see, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. A little over a year ago, I took a trip to Kerrville, Texas to go see the solar eclipse of 2024. When I got there, I was exhausted. It's 15 hours. There was plenty of small towns that I thought were pretty cool along the way, but guess what? By the time I got there, I was exhausted. In fact, I ran into a little difficulty. I was in El Paso, and I stopped the car at a library to take a nap overnight. And when I got up in the morning, the cop thought I was drunk. And so just a rather rough trip getting into Kerrville. And when I got into Kerrville, I wanted to know where everybody else was driving from. There were a lot of people who were in my boat, right? They were single, took the trip alone. But I realized that the couples who drove there had so much more energy because they took turns driving, and they had much better stories along the way. There was one couple who drove from Los Angeles, which is considerably farther from Kerrville than Phoenix is, right? They probably passed Phoenix along the way. And they had a lot of good trips. I don't think they stopped in Phoenix, but they did see El Paso and a few other places. And it was a big catalyst for why I wanted to return to dating again. That, and also seeing Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and how happy they were. I think those were the two catalysts last year. And little disadvantages like that could really, well, it's kind of unfortunate too, right? There are probably a lot of people who would otherwise have better marriages with themselves, but these societal disadvantages have kind of overruled it, that, right? This is the Peter